The world of Super Smash Bros. Has fallen to a dreaded zombie apocalypse. It's up to a small group of survivors, the Fellowship of the Bus, to find the cure and put a stop to this destruction once and for all. Alliances will be formed, loved ones will be murdered, but only the most tenacious will survive in this brilliant adventure of Nintendo Crossed with classic horror. Hello everyone, welcome to episode 11 of FanFic Breakdown, a series where we review, break down, and analyze various Super Smash Bros. Fanfictions and other Nintendo-related stories in the Nintendo fandom. Today I bring you a story called Road Trip, a Super Smash Bros. Zombie apocalypse story, written and published by the fandom's very own Shadzy, or Shadzy, however she pronounces it. In this story, a zombie virus has spread throughout the entire world of Nintendo. We got characters coming from the Mario series, the Zelda series, Pokemon, every major Nintendo franchise are joined together in this universe. Now each of the Nintendo universes themselves, they're spread into their own subverses that can be accessed through some kind of interconnected bridge or a highway that only certain beings are allowed to cross, such as, say, the Master Hand and Crazy Hand. It's not unsimilar to what we saw in Super Smash Bros. Brawl's Subspace Emissary, where the characters were coming together from different parts of the universe, and then they met each other and then explored each other's different worlds. So you had characters encountering a bunch of enemies and objects from the various worlds like Super Mario and The Legend of Zelda. The same thing applies here, except it takes place after the Subspace Emissary. It takes place after a lot of the main characters' major games. So it takes place after Kid Icarus Uprising, after the events of The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess. Those are kind of two of the major games that must be established. And what happens is, in one way or another, some kind of zombie apocalypse thing starts, where someone gets bit or some zombie virus starts spreading. No one really knows where it came from. As you would expect in like the stereotypical zombie films, it just spreads from one person to the next, and then the next thing you know, you got people trying to fight for survival in order to not be bit and turn into mindless zombies that just end up turning on their friends. What this story has that the other ones don't, though, is it has the actual character development that makes the reader really care about the group of survivors that were following on this adventure. And I'm going to get into them right away, since this story is very character-driven. So starting off our list of main characters, we have the Fellowship of the Bus, as we established in Chapter 2 of the story, the Fellowship of the Bus. Now, to kind of give you a better idea of what that means is, we have these characters that are escaping from the Super Smash Bros. Mansion or the tournament or whatever. They're trying to escape from whatever location they're currently in. They're being chased by zombies, but they manage to somehow secure a school bus of some kind. And this school bus becomes a mainstay throughout almost the entirety of the story, because they're using this bus to get from one location to the next across the different Nintendo universes. So our main characters, I'm going to list them off. They're not in any particular order, but more in order of kind of their relevance in the story, I should say. We've got Link and Zelda from The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Now that's actually an important thing to note, because the author makes various nods throughout the story that Link and Zelda have gone through their adventure in Twilight Princess, and that the Links that were in the older Super Smash Bros. Game, like the Link from Melee, he was based on the Ocarina of Time Link, and his story already went and passed, and he's kind of like an ancestor of this Link. So it's kind of ties to the Zelda timeline thing already. But it's also important to note that the Link in this story makes a lot of nods to Midna and his wolf form from Twilight Princess. So if you've played Twilight Princess, then you're gonna know who this Link and Zelda are, and I'm pretty sure they're the established Link and Zelda in Super Smash Bros. 4 and Brawl for certain. So next we got Pit and Dark Pit. Like most Kid Icarus fanfictions, they're the Pit and Dark Pit from Kid Icarus Uprising, since that's really the only game that they have. I mean, sure, they have Kid Icarus the original, but no one really ever played it. I've played it too, and it's not like an amazing game. Kid Icarus Uprising, though, it's got the story, and it's got all the cheesy humor and the charm that define Pit and Dark Pit as who they are. And I really like the relationship they have going in this story, because unlike a lot of people who write Pit and Dark Pit, they tend to write them as opposites of one another. Instead of being opposites in this story, Pit and Dark Pit kind of complement each other. And by that I mean, Dark Pit doesn't just say, oh, like, that's a dumb idea, Pit, like, why would you say that? He's not just shutting down Pit anytime he says something. The events of Kid Icarus Uprising have already taken place before this story takes place, so that whole conflict with Pit and Dark Pit and them Dark Pit trying to figure out who he is relative to who Pit is, because he's a clone of him or whatever, that's already been resolved. They become more like brothers than rivals or enemies, and it really shows in this story because Dark Pit comes off as a guy who he makes fun of Pit sometimes, but secretly deep down he does care about him because at the end of the day they're both kind of the same being. Because Dark Pit was created from Pit using the Medusa's mirror or whatever, I forget what it was. I forget the name of the god whose mirror it was, but the author does a great job at characterizing Pit and Dark Pit, and I'm not going to get into spoilers with this story because there are a lot of spoilers, but it gets amplified tenfold as you go through the story and see Pit and Dark Pit's interactions with not only each other, but the other people in their caravan. So now we got Samus, who is pretty much Samus as she's mostly written in other fan fictions. The author claims to not be a really big Metroid enthusiast, so I can understand that why she would fall to the simple Samus is just she's a cold-blooded bounty hunter. She tries to show no emotion when she can. She was usually always serious. That's all cool. She kind of adds to a part of the group that the others don't, and she also acts as kind of a leader in that way, someone that you can always depend on. Moving on, we've got Mario and Peach, and Mario is also considered one of the leading characters in their group. He's a friend to everybody, but because of the events that take place in this story, he becomes somewhat mellowed out because of all the carnage and the things that they've seen. As for Peach, I believe she is supposed to be like the typical Princess Peach that she is, where she's kind of girly and usually very optimistic. But again, it's a zombie apocalypse story, so most of the characters in this story are a little on the not really depressing side, but they're not all like happy all the time. Like Pit, sure, Pit kind of would fall under the category of the guy who kind of brings people their happiness. Peach doesn't really seem to do that though, and I think it more has to do with her being, since she's the princess of the Mushroom Kingdom, and then she's worried about how her kingdom might have fallen, so it all really makes sense by the end of it. Then we got Lucario, who is Lucario from the Pokemon series, and he's inspired by the same Lucario that inspires the Lucario in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which is the Lucario from the 7th movie, I think it's the 7th movie, Pokemon Lucario and the Mystery of Mew, where he can use telepathy. Even though he's not a psychic Pokemon, he can use telepathy to speak to people, and he becomes an asset to our team because he has the ability to sense aura in people. So he can pretty much determine if there's going to be zombies approaching them from far away or not, because the zombies emit some kind of negative aura. Similar to what we saw in Subspace Emissary, where Lucario could sense the Primids approaching them when they were on the Halberd. And he's also a great fighter. And on the topic of Pokemon, we also have Red, who is the Pokemon trainer from Brawl, and he does come with his 3 starter Pokemon, Squirtle, Ivysaur, and Charizard. He does some fighting. He doesn't have too much going for him in terms of character. He's more just kind of there to help around with things. He doesn't do too much fighting because, again, he is a Pokemon trainer, so any fighting that he does do, he leaves to the Pokemon, but he comes off as like a really good trainer. Since he is the only Pokemon trainer in the group, a lot of the things he says do pertain to taking care of Pokemon and just caring about living things in general. And he does this a few times when someone in the group would tell him, like, why aren't you helping us, and he's saying, like, the Pokemon, they're not my pets, I can't just order them around, they trust me, and things like that. Moving on, we have, we're getting towards the end of the list here. These are pretty much all the main characters that you're going to be seeing throughout the entirety of the story. There are other characters, but they kind of come and go as we're going throughout the adventure here. We've got Ness and Lucas, who are, of course, Ness and Lucas from the Earthbound Mother series. I believe the author says she also hasn't really played their games too, and so she kind of is inspired by the events in Brawl, where Ness befriends Lucas in like that haunted playground or whatever it was, and then Lucas is the timid one, as he's shown in his game, and Ness is kind of a little bit more adventurous. They're a little bit immature in this story compared to how I think they should be portrayed, and by that I mean, like, whenever the group is like stopped somewhere, they're always just like randomly running around playing with the dog. There's a dog in their group too. They don't do too much fighting. They do fight, but I feel like they're kind of treated as the kids, quote unquote, in the group. The kids that are looked after by the adult characters, which to me doesn't really make too much sense since they do have magical powers, and they do fight, don't get me wrong, they do fight, and they do have a sense of innocence about them because they're kids. But at the same time, given the fact that this story takes place after Twilight Princess and Kid Icarus, I would also assume it takes place after Mother 2 and Mother 3. They were still all-around great characters, though, that kind of rounded up the group as well. With the dog, we're talking about the Duck Hunt dog, who goes by the name of Ducky in this story, which is kind of ironic because the duck from Duck Hunt actually doesn't appear at all in this story. It's just the dog. Every zombie story or every apocalypse story needs a dog. I mean, that's kind of a given. You need a dog to kind of just be that companion that helps you go through, this hardship. And Ducky does just that. He's dependable. He's always helping everyone in the group. He has no prejudice. He has none of that stuff. He's just a loyal companion. And even though he is a dog, he's very much a character just as much as everyone else is in the story, because the author does give him as much attention as the others. And then finally we have Toon Link, he's the alternate version of Link from the Wind Waker and Spirit Tracks series. In this story, there's like multiple links, much like in the Zelda timeline. We have the Link from Ocarina of Time, we have the Link from Twilight Princess, we got a Link from Wind Waker. The Link from Ocarina of Time has gone and passed and done his thing already, so this story contains Link from Twilight Princess. It also has Toon Link from Wind Waker, and they're okay. They're both like holders of the Triforce and all that stuff, that's all true. They kind of treat each other as more of a younger/older brother relationship, but at the end of the day, the bigger Link does take more of a plot significance or plot relevance compared to Toon Link, because Toon Link kind of gets bundled with the other kids in some ways. He's still a character that is separate in terms of personality, but he also does kind of get clumped together with the kids. So that kind of forms our Fellowship of the Bus. All these 13 members of the bus. The whole story, they're just running is them on the run from the zombie apocalypse. Now let me say something about the zombies in this story. The zombies in this story are not like something out of, say, Night of the Living Dead, where they're like older classical zombies where they'll rise from the underground and they'll start walking and shambling really slowly, going like brains, they don't really do that in this story. These zombies are more like the zombies you see in the newer Resident Evil games, where they have enough intelligence to go into this berserk mode where they'll charge at you like full force and with incredible speed. Since the zombies are all based on Nintendo characters and other characters appearing in Nintendo games, they've got certain qualities that make them more superhuman than normal. So let me come up with an example. So like, say if there's a Mii fighter who is a zombie, like the Mii fighter is going to be a lot stronger than a regular human just because it's a Mii fighter, right? They're trained to be a lot stronger. So you might see some things like someone getting a limb torn off, like a normal zombie would just grab onto somebody and just start biting them. But most of the zombies in this game, although there is biting, most of them in this story will like attempt to freaking mutilate people, which is what makes them so deadly. I got a real flashback to High School of the Dead, the anime, only because it has all the action that High School of the Dead does, and there are a lot of crazy stunts that take place, which what makes the fight scenes really entertaining. The only thing that this story doesn't have that High School of the Dead does is the boob factor, but you don't really need it in this story because the author does throw in quite a lot of innuendo there's innuendo in like every chapter. It's not over the top, it's kind of like sprinkled throughout in the writing, but it adds a certain sense of humor to the story that it otherwise would be lacking. And it's hard for me to categorize this as a horror adventure or a horror humor, because don't get me wrong, the story is very serious. But a lot of the times in the writing, the author will throw little jokes in every now and then. And to me, that kind of adds to the charm of the whole Super Smash Bros. Factor, since Super Smash Bros. Is, of course, just like a crazy fighting game with a bunch of characters thrown in. It's about action, it's about fun, and just absolute insanity. And the humor factor that she does throw into the writing style really kind of goes well with all of the characters in the story. And you can especially see it during one chapter in the beginning where the group, they escape the zombie apocalypse and they stumble upon a forest, and in the forest there's a hot spring. And then, so that's kind of like one of the things that, it doesn't really add anything to the plot, but it's kind of just there for fun. But it also kind of adds to the character development part too, because what the story is about is we have all these characters that don't really know each other that well. I mean, sure, Link and Zelda know each other, but like Link doesn't really know Ness or Lucas, or he doesn't know Samus. Like, he knows Samus, but not like too much in too much detail, So the characters don't know too much about each other. And as we're going through the story, they learn things about one another that they otherwise wouldn't have normally learned had they just been participating in like the fighting tournament and just left to their own devices. The story is mostly about the hardships of friendship and coming together with people in order to achieve a common goal. And that's what they're trying to do throughout the entirety of the story. Their whole goal in this story is to escape the virus, not only escape the virus, but to determine what the cure is. So moving on to the setting. The story takes place in the world of trophies. Based on the subspace emissary, we've got all the interconnected worlds joined to one another. The characters are on this bus, and they're journeying from one world to the next in order to get to their destination. They're trying to get to Hyrule. That's kind of their goal, because supposedly in Hyrule they have established some kind of anti-zombie fortress or stations, or they're sanitized or whatever. A lot of the worlds have fallen as we learn throughout the course of the story. So say like the Mushroom Kingdom, it falls to the zombie virus. So Master Hand has no choice but to seal that world off from the rest of the other worlds so that it doesn't spread any further. So on this bus, the characters are kind of going from one destination to the next in an attempt to find Hyrule. And they go through a few different scenarios. So one day they're going to be traveling through the desert. One day they're going to be traveling through a snowy area, which is very similar to what we've seen in Subspace Emissary, where we have all these different locations and different types of terrain brought together. Like there was a jungle and there was a valley and there was sky area in the Subspace Emissary. Very similar to what we've got in this story as well. So the author does a really good job at establishing some kind of lore based on what little information we're given. Like the only information we're really given about previous lore in Super Smash Bros. Is Subspace Emissary. And she kind of piggybacks off of that idea on the universes joining thing. That really helps to expand on the world that we're given, and also where each of the characters come from in their own worlds. And there's a few other things too that fall back to classic zombie films. Like there's a part where they end up coming across an abandoned convenience store, you know, and they have to stock up on supplies, you know. There's no guns or anything like that also. None of the characters have guns except for like Samus. Of course, everyone else has got their weapons that they should be. You would expect Link to have a sword and a bow. You would expect Pit and Dark Pit to have their bow staffs or their tiger claws or whatever the heck they use in Kid Icarus Uprising. So everyone's got the weapons that you would expect them to have in the story, which is also great because it doesn't just turn into an alternate universe story where, oh yeah, Link can use a gun, you know, all of a sudden because it's a zombie apocalypse and every zombie movie needs guns. No, like that also adds kind of to the creativity of the story as well. The ways that they deal with killing these zombies makes for some very gruesome yet entertaining battle scenes. At the end of the day, this story's main theme, for me anyways, like you can read it for fun as just an adventure horror if you're into that, but for me, I really appreciated the theme of these friends not starting out as friends, but coming together and feeling a strength of them being united to stand against something that they believed in, to stand for something that they believed in. Throughout the course of the story, people are going to live, people are going to die, and it could be people that are in our group, it could be people that they come across that end up living and dying, people that you love because you're a fan of a certain Nintendo game. The strength that they gain from going through these hardships only ends up empowering them as they continue to fight, and it becomes their driving force by the end of it. It's very anime-esque in some ways, but again, it kind of adds to the charm of what Super Smash Bros. Is. Any final notes? I can say for sure that there will be quite a lot of fourth wall breaking in this story. Not over the top, but she does make a lot of nods to the people behind the fourth wall, you know, which is obviously alluding to the people who play the Nintendo games and play Super Smash Bros. And so it can be kind of fun, you know. It's like the story is self-aware in a way. And like I said before as well, this story has one of the best examples of the Nintendo universes blended together. It does it better than Subspace Emissary does, I think, because in Subspace Emissary, it just had a bunch of random locations put together in this world that was kind of seamless. Whereas here, we've actually got nods to the actual Nintendo world. So it's like we've got Hyrule, we've got the Mushroom Kingdom, we've got Skyworld, you know, we've got all of these places that the characters know of. We also have Kalos, actually, too. Kalos from Pokemon X and Y does get mentioned in this story. So places that characters know and love and have been to, they all appear in this story or are mentioned at least at some point, and they end up going past them on their journey. And like I said before as well, there's a lot of great references to Twilight Princess and Kid Icarus Uprising. Those two games in particular, because Link, Zelda, Pit, and Dark Pit make a lot of nods, and even some quotes too, that they might have said in the games, or nods to characters that they talked to or appeared in those games. There's a lot of nods to those two games specifically. There is some to Pokemon X and Y as well. I think there's a few to Wind Waker and Spirit Tracks as well. I'm not sure about Mario and Peach, if they make any allusions to any of their previous games, but I don't even know if Super Mario has any lore to it, but whatever. Finishing off here, the situations are tense and there's plenty of action and suspense, and the most of all, there is so much emotion in this story between the characters and what they're trying to do. You really feel for them when they get to the more tender parts of the story. It really reminded me of Attack on Titan. I never watched the whole thing, but a lot of the moments in Attack on Titan, which is one of those, it's a very similar like apocalyptic anime, and the author even says that some of it kind of helped inspire her to write some of these cutscenes, some of these fight scenes. I mean, there's a lot of tender moments when, you know, you're a human and your race is on the brink of destruction. You know, what are you supposed to do? Like, are you supposed to just give up, or do you continue to fight back, you know, knowing that the odds are against you? That's exactly the kind of thing that the characters in this story have to go through. The last thing I'm going to say is that this story is without a doubt one of the best I've ever read. The author may not agree with me in that aspect, but I mean, this story is about 2 years old now, I think. But to this day, it still remains one of my favorite stories I've ever read. This is my second time going through it now, and it's still as great as when I read it the first time. The writing style is just, it's not heavy, but it's also not simple, like in terms of how it's going. The narration, the characters all have their own personality. The narrator also has a personality as well when he or she is describing the events that are taking place in the story. And it adds to, it makes the reading both fun and exciting, while at the same time very emotional when it gets to the parts that are emotional. It's kind of hard to describe, but I will say, like, it's a very clever use of narration, especially with, I mean, there's a lot of fourth wall breaking, but that also adds to the humor aspect of the story. So even though it is an adventure horror, I would also kind of throw a bit of humor in there, because there are quite a lot of moments in this story where you might end up laughing at some of the things that the characters say to each other or the antics that take place. It's overall, like I've said it before, it's a very charming story, but it's also very suspenseful. I definitely consider this one of the best I've ever read in the fandom, and I'm not even trying to sugarcoat it. It's just so cool, you know. If you ever wanted to read a story about, you know, Super Smash Bros. Characters trying to survive in a zombie apocalypse, this is the story for you. Like, read this story. If you're a fan of zombies and Nintendo, just read the story and you will not regret it. Trust me. So once again, that was Road Trip by Shadzy. Don't be fooled by the title. This is not any ordinary road trip. Let me assure you that. I'm Smash King 24. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you guys in the next episode, or maybe not. See you later.